Hi everyone, we're just going to give it a couple more minutes to allow some more people to join and we'll start shortly. So, hello everyone and thanks for joining today's webinar, Craft Your Formula, the if function. Um, as I'm sure you all know by now, my name's Milo and I'm part of the support team. And today I will be introducing you to the world of formula building within Workbooks reports. While there are many different formulas that can be used, we'll be focusing on the if function and how they can be used and built. As I'm sure you'll know, we are currently running a series of webinars every other Wednesday at 4 p.m. On the screen, you can see how our journey has progressed and the next couple that we've got planned. We do also run a 2-day training course on reporting where we go into the topics a little bit more in depth. And if you want more information about these courses, you can contact your account manager or email training@workbooks.com. So with that said, let's get into today's topic. To start with, I'll be going over what a conditional statement is and how it can be used. From there, I'll show you how to build a simple if statement, and then also looking into a nested if statement, plus showing you how to build these within workbooks. As ever, there will be time for questions afterwards, and this session is being recorded. So, what is a conditional statement? A conditional statement is a test to see if something is true or false and bring back a specific value based on the result. The most common examples you'll find in workbooks are if and case statements. We'll be covering case statements in our next webinar, so be sure to catch that one. Now, you may not realize it, but we actually use conditional statements every day from the moment we wake up. One example of a simple everyday if statement is it raining? If it is, then you're going to take an umbrella. If it's not raining, then you won't take one. I know it seems fairly obvious. Yes, I know that we do also add additional statements in our day-to-day life, but this gives you an idea. Now, when we look into building these statements within workbooks, it's useful to know that the formula uses a cut down selection of MySQL statements. For those of you who don't know, this is an open source database related language, meaning that there's lots of sources that you can use to help build formula. There are also similarities with formula in Excel, and just like in Excel, it's important that you use the correct syntax. So let's have a look at how an if formula is built. First of all, you'll put an if and you'll open your brackets. Next, you will add your test. So in this example, is it raining? And then add a comma. You would then add the value that you want if the statement is true and add another comma. So for here, it's yes, take an umbrella. You would then add your full statement. So leave it at home and add another comma. Oh, sorry, apologies. You wouldn't add another comma. You would close your brackets, uh, and that is an if statement. Knowing this, imagine you want to have a column in a report that tests if the value of an opportunity is greater than 70,000, and you want to you need to show this, and you need to show this in your formula. So what you would within your formula, you would make sure that you have greater than 70,000. For your yes statement, you would then put the words important deal. And one thing you should note is as we're adding a text, you need to make sure that you've got the apostrophes before and after, which tells the system that it is a text value. If the deal is not over 70,000 and you don't want any sort of output, then you would have to put a null. Now, when we add these elements together, including the column in the report that we want to look at, you would get a formula that looks like this. Now, this formula goes if the amount home currency is greater than 70,000 to put important deal, if not, put null. Now, you also notice that even though that we're looking at currencies, I've not had to add the currency symbol. This is particularly useful, especially when you're dealing with multiple currencies. And while this is good, there are times that when you don't want the output to be either a string or a null, there are actually other values that you can have in here. You can have numeric values, you can have values based on another column, and even a calculation within there. So an example of this could be that a salesperson gets a higher commission when they sell a certain product compared to others. Let's say, using the example on the screen, that if they sell an item that has the product category, they get a 5% commission, but for all other products, they get a 4% commission. On the screen, we can see what that formula looks like. So this formula is looking at the line item product category and says if it is services, then to bring the value of the line item home currency net value and times that by 0.05 if it's true, and if it's false, then to bring back the net value and multiply it by 0.04. With all if statements, you can have multiple layers within it, and this is something that we call a nested if. Building on the example that I went to earlier, where we were identifying important details, we could write a statement that looks to see if the value is over 70,000 and then say important deal. We could then add a level in there to say that if it's more than 50,000 but less or equal to 70 to show large deal. If it's more than 20,000 or less, if it's less or equal to less, if it's more than 20,000 but less or equal to 50,000 to put medium deal, and if it's less than 20,000 to put small deal, and anything else to not show anything. The formula for such a statement would look something like this. The first row is similar to the example from earlier, though you can see that rather than adding a false statement, it goes down to the next row, which says if the value is greater than 50,000 to put large deal. The third row, if the value is more than 20,000 to put medium deal, and so forth. And then the last one, we have that if none of these are met, then to put null. When building a formula like this, because we are opening and closing a lot of brackets, you do need to make sure that you have the same amount of opening as closing ones. You can see that that this is something that if you don't, I will show you what happens within workbooks. You should also pay attention to the number of commas, as these are also used to break up what the formula should be doing. A good use for an if formula is when you want to add a criteria to a report that looks at one value or another. An example of this could be that you want a report to show opportunities that are worth more than 70,000 or are at stage 4. Normally, when you add multiple criteria, it only shows rows that meet both of the meet all the criteria that you add. By using this approach, it means that you can see rows that are stage 4 and are also or are more than 50,000. So for a formula like this, we would have something as shown on the screen. While it does look similar to the ones I've shown so far, the difference is that instead of putting a comma after the 70,000, I've put an or along with another test. So in this case, to show that when the opportunity stage equals stage 4. After this, I've asked to return a 1 if it's true or a 0 if it's not. A formula like this can be used with a calculated criteria so that when we see records of interest, I will know how to, that we can only see records of interest. And I'll show you how to do this soon. For now, let me pop into Workbooks and start showing you how you would do some of the stuff that I've shown you. I've quickly built a report that's based on opportunities, and I've added a criteria to only show opportunities that have a close date of this year. I want to add a calculated column that says when opportunities have a value of over 70,000 to show the words important deal. Now to do this, I would first click on calculated column, and I would need to give a title for this new column. For now, I'm just going to put important deals. And now I would need to look into building my formula. Well, you could always just write in the text that you want. You do have the option down here that says to add a function. So if I first select this, you can see that we do have multiple options. And the if statement, as I said earlier, is a conditional function. So if I first click on the conditional function, I get a new dropdown. If I click on here, you can see that we do have a few different conditional functions. I'm not going to be using all of them today, but I will be going through some. But as I said, the one that we want is an if. When I press this, you can see in my formula box that it's already started to put in what I want. So next, I need to choose the field or column that I actually want to use within my statement. When adding a column, while you may know the name of what the field is, that's what's known as the field label. When building a calculated column, it actually requires what's known as the underlying field name. So I would always advise to use this option down here that says to add a column. So if I go here and then I will want to start typing in the amount, the column that I want, and I get my amount home currency. And you can see that that has now been added. So with the column that I've got in there, I now need to add the rest of my formula. So I've said that this is greater than 70,000. I would then put my comma. Then I'd need to put my yes statement or my true statement. So I'm going to put important deal. I then add my comma and then put null as my false statement and close the brackets. Now, I've put null here in capitals, but it's good to, but you don't have to do it. I find it useful to put null in capitals so that if I'm coming back to it later on, I know what I'm looking for. Now, I have put important deal within the apostrophes, but to show you, if I don't add one and try to save this, I will get a message to say that it cannot find the column important within an opportunity. This indicates that it's trying to find a column name rather than trying to put a string value. So I will put my apostrophe back in and then save and close. And when I load my preview, what I will do is just bring my column over so that we can see it more easily. And I'm then going to put the home currency in descending order. And we can now see that it's showing all of the values over 70,000 have important deal within the column that I created. Now, a good way to practice when using Formulae is to do a sense check, which is what I've just done, just to make sure that it is working the way that you want. And that's how you build a simple if statement. If I wanted to turn my current formula into a nested if statement, I could look into finding the column that I've created and making changes within the formula here. But what I want to do in this example is I'm actually going to build a new column and create my nested if that way. So as before, I will add a new calculated column, and this time I'm going to call it level of deal. As before, I will look into adding my function, so I need to use the drop down, which is again conditional function, and then I would select if. Once I've got that, I can then add my column, which again, I'm wanting to add the amount, home currency, and I would add my symbol of greater than and put in the 70,000. And then add my comma and put in the value that I want out. Next, rather than putting my full statement, I'm going to start a new line. And one thing that you can do with Formula is if you do have something similar already, you can copy and paste it for a new line. So as I said, the next one I want to look at is values over 50,000, where I want the output of large deal. and add my comma. Next, anything over 20,000, I want to put a value of medium deal. Next, I want to show anything that's less, so I would go anything that is less than 20,000, but small deal. And then I will put null, meaning anything that doesn't meet the above will just have a null value. And then I would start to close my brackets. And I know that I have put too few brackets in there, but if I try and go save and close, it does tell me that I'm mismatching parentheses, meaning brackets. So I would need to find the one that I'm missing and add it there. So let me now save and close this. And I'm going to refresh my preview again. And for my new column, let me drag over, put it next to the amount home currency, and put the currency in descending order again. And we can see, as before, anything over 70,000 is important deal. Anything over 50,000 is showing as large deal, and anything over 20,000 is showing as medium deal. So that's creating a nested if. So let me just save my report. Now, hopefully you remember that I said that if statements can also be used for a calculated criteria. Again, I will still use my current report, but let's say that my manager wants the report to only show opportunities that are at stage 4 or are important deals from this year. And they want to see that within the details view. So to do this, I would again start by adding another calculated column. And I'm going to give it a title of important or one deals. And now I'm going to starting to build my if statement. Like before, I'm going to still add my if statement using the drop downs. And I will start by putting in the test that if the amount home currency is greater than 70,000, and I'm not going to add my comma just yet. What I am going to do is add an or, followed by the column called stage. So let me just quickly add that. And then I'll need to add an equal sign. And as the value of the stage is a string, I'll need to make sure that I put the value of 1 in apostrophes. Now, as someone who is dyslexic, I do sometimes have problems with my worms. So I always check the spelling is exactly the same as what's seen in the column. If it isn't, then it's not going to work the way that you want it to. But to carry on with the formula, I'll add my comma and I will put a 1 to show that if this is true, that's the value to give me. And for my false, I will put a 0. Now I will save and close my formula. And when I refresh my preview and bring over my new column, you can see that we are getting values for all of those important deals and also for any one deals. So in order to actually get these to show, what I need to do is go to my criteria tab. And when I try to add a criteria, you will see that the column that I'm wanting, the one that I've just created of important deals, if I start typing it, it's not actually showing up. So what I actually need to do is add what is known as a calculated criteria. Now, when I do this, I do have my drop down, and you can see that it's showing all of the calculated columns that I've created so far on this. So I'm going to select the important or one deals, and then when I save and close, apologies, once I've added the column that I want, I need to choose an operator to say, okay, this is what I want it to be. So I'm going to pick equals, and I'm going to press 1 because that's the value that I want. Now, I do know that I did have record status open. I'm going to quickly remove that criteria. And so I'm now just looking at current calendar year ones and important or one deals. And when I refresh my preview and bring this over again, you can see that I've got opportunities that have been won, and I've also got the opportunities that have a value of greater than 70,000. And that's it. Those are if statements. So to recap, the if function is a conditional function that allows you to check if something is met and return you a value if it's true or a different value if it's false. If statements can be used singularly, or you can nest multiple ones together. If you are going to nest them, make sure that you match opening and closing brackets. An if statement is a great way to add an or criteria within your reports. And something else that I know I didn't touch on, but if you are adding if statements, you can also use them to count values within summary views. So let's see if we've got any questions. Okay, just having a look. I've got one question that's come in. I know I didn't touch on this, but they've asked, does adding a calculated criteria actually impact the performance of your reports? You may have noticed that while I was actually on there creating the calculated criteria, there was a message that came up that did say this can make your report run slow. So it is something to consider for that. Let me just see if I've got any more questions. Yep. So I've just had another one come in. So let me have a look at this. Within a nested if statement, does the order of the statements matter? Yes, they do, because the way that an if statement works is it looks at the first test that you do. So in the example that I was using, it was looking at the greater than 70,000. And if it meets that, then it will give out a value. If it's false, it will then look at the next test or statement. So the one that I had was greater than 50,000, and it would look at, is this one true? As any value over 70,000 would have already counted for the first one, it's not going to be picked up by the following statement. It will just move on to the next one. So when building them, if you are looking at numbers, it is a great tip to actually have your highest values to start with and then work down. Let's just see, do we have any more? Nothing's come through. So let me just quickly check. No, we haven't had any more. So I want to thank you all for joining us today for our if statement webinar. For our next one, as I said earlier, we are looking at case statements and how they can be done, and that will be on the 28th of May at 4 p.m. In the meantime, if you do need help or assistance, you can use our knowledge base to see if what you can do, or alternatively, if you're a support contact, you can get hold of support directly, either by email or phone or your case portal. Plus, you can always reach out to your account manager. We do have some recordings and videos on the following topics, so that is something that you can look into. And the recording for this webinar plus our past ones can actually be found on our website at the following link. And what you would simply need to do is select webinar recordings, and then you will be able to see them. But thank you for attending, everyone, and I hope to see you all next time.